I think of Solana as kind of a world computer where anyone can just build products and then they're judged by the markets. To send money from Canada to Australia, it hops between jurisdictions and it's super inefficient. I think Solana is the best place to do that. And so my current mission is how do we accelerate this thing to something the world has never seen before.
Mert Mumtaz, the co-founder and CEO of Helius,
the top infrastructure company in the Solana world. Mert is also one of the most influential people
and the biggest advocate of the Solana ecosystem.
What is Helius?
Home Depot for internet apps. Just imagine a hammer and a nail, but on the internet.
Why did you start Helius instead of any other crypto company?
I've always been super annoyed by is the lack of applications in crypto. Okay, how do I change this? And I figured the best is make it much easier for developers to bring ideas into life.
Are you able to be happy?
I actually don't optimize for happiness. I've had a lot of early death when I was a kid. One day we got this phone call and they're like, yeah, your mom was in a car accident. And she was in this coma. And she passed away a few days after that. But the sun still comes up the next day, doesn't it?
We've come such a long way since the disastrous end of 2022 in crypto. How does it feel today to have been the most outspoken character on Solana when everyone was against you and mocking you to now be proven right? 75% of you that watch this channel frequently do not subscribe. If you like this show and think it provides value to you in your crypto investing journey, can you please do me a favor and subscribe to this channel? Hit the like button and leave a comment below. It helps this channel more than you can imagine. The bigger the channel, the bigger the guests, and the better the conversation. Thank you. This conversation is supported by Jupiter, the most used decentralized trading platform on Solana and the largest DAO in the world. Sui, a scalable layer 1 blockchain that's fast, secure, and affordable, built by previous Facebook developers, and that delivers the benefits of Web3 with the ease of Web2. And Mental, an Ethereum layer 2 that built two products I particularly like. FBTC, which enables you to borrow and lend Bitcoin in DeFi, and METH or METH, one of the largest ETH liquid staking protocols that, by the way, just launched its token called Cook. I had Joe McCann on the podcast, and he actually said the medical system is not made or built to heal people, it's made to keep them sick. He has very strong views on that.
Yeah,
I mean, he has very strong views on many things, right? But
yeah, I think I've seen that view expressed pretty commonly in the recent years, where people treat medicine as this giant bureaucracy where they're just trying to milk you with money. Perhaps the system does that overall, but I don't think the individual doctors think that way. I actually think I think it's simply a problem of training and education. They don't think like scientists or physicists or engineers. They're not solving problems from first principles. They kind of just have this body of knowledge that they've recited for 4 straight years or 5 straight years. And then when the time comes, they just blurt it back out. Surgeons, on the other hand, actually, I think are very, very skilled people because the results of a surgery are tangible. So if you have a record, of 500 successful surgeries and whatnot, that's actually something I trust. Versus the doctor, I often find I have to get multiple second opinions and then do my own research. And I do think AI will actually, I use Perplexity now, which is basically Google replacement. And obviously you shouldn't go to for everything, but for dosaging of medicine and stuff like that, it's actually been super helpful.
I mean, if you think about it, you're in control of your own destiny, right? For everything. Life, finances, and health is the same. And even these people also don't necessarily think that there's this system that's against everyone. But just the fact that they are so busy, right? That they have 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 30 minutes to see you. Then there's the next one. At the end of the day, you can get some hints. You go see a few people. You hope that you're going to get some kind of converging information. But you are the one who should kind of take the lead and, I don't want to say be your own doctor, but almost, right? And be like, okay, now I'm the one who makes my own decisions. And no one is going to make it for me. And I think too many people, the same with finance, the same with work, actually kind of, or, retirement, same, right? Kind of rely on the system to make their decisions, and it's probably not the right way to do things.
Yeah. I mean, basically the way I just think about it in my mental model always is like, nobody's coming to save you ever.
100%.
Especially as a male, like nobody's coming for you. You have to kind of just do that on your own and figure it out.
Do you want to develop a bit on the, especially as a male part?
Yeah, I think society like expects a bunch of stuff from males specifically, because like, you know, I don't want to make any offensive remarks, but generally as a male, you kind of go out into the world earlier on your own and you need to kind of just figure things out. There's less empathy for you. There's less sympathy. They're like, oh, just a guy, whatever, you got to figure this out on your own. You know, you got to make all this money. You got to kind of provide, you got to do all this thing. And that's fair and that's fine. And that's how it should be, I think. But like, certainly there is less sympathy I found towards males in society, especially in the Western societies, I would say. Perhaps it's different in East or like Middle East. But like in Canada, my dad used to have a bunch of jokes about this. So maybe I'm kind of swayed by him. But basically the point I'm trying to make is like, you guys just do it on your own. Obviously you can have friends and family and all this stuff and that's fine. But fundamentally, like nobody's coming. You need to just figure it out.
I think it's Naval who says something like, life is a single player game, right?
Yep.
You're just on your own for everything. And the faster you realize that, the better.
Yes. Yep. It's certainly single player.
I have to mention quickly, like the Trump tweet the other day.
Yeah.
So Trump tweeted your X handle the other day to his like 91 million followers. How the fuck did that even happen?
I'm actually not quite sure. I think because I'm not the only one. There was other ones that were mentioned. I believe it's like if you engage with certain tweets, perhaps I engaged with one like a few months ago about voting or something. I think it's just an automated bot that comes and mentions you. Now, the funny part is that people started getting like all these weird theories about like, oh, like Barron was probably on Mert's account and then forgot to like, because you know when you're on somebody's account and you click tweet, it's actually their name first because it assumes you're trying to reply to them. And so people just kind of had all these weird theories and I was like, this is not correct. But it was funny. And like, I knew it was a bot, obviously. I think everybody knows it's a bot. Or I mean, I guess not the theorists. But I thought it was funny because I was able to like make it into a shitpost basically. Because we actually have a meme guy at Helius, a creative director. And anytime I think of a meme, there was that picture of when Trump got shot and then he got up and then he has like the fist pump. And I was like, okay, just replace the American flag with a Solana flag and put some pit vipers on him. And so I replied with that. So like that went pretty viral. So I don't know, just gotta make a lemonade, I guess, with lemons.
Bullish Solana, I guess.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Who am I? I am a bald Turkish guy that's very angry on the internet.
You don't seem to be that angry in real life.
Yeah, I actually get this a lot when people tell me this. And the reason is quite simple. It's because people generally don't say ridiculous things in person, but it's the norm on the internet. So it was just before when you kind of brought me in the studio, I just saw a tweet and it was like, this guy was like, Starknet did, 800 TPS bursts, which burst means like all at once, basically. And then he's like, this is impressive. And then he just randomly brings in Solana out of nowhere. And he's like, Solana's max is like 1300 TPS lifetime. And then I'm kind of like, why did you have to kind of go ahead and mention Solana there? Because that's an incorrect number. Like, why are you just making shit up? And then I had to go to DVIN because I have like this thing where I'm like, if I see incorrect things, I need to look at the actual data and be like, okay, that's incorrect. And I had to reply with that. And so like, that's an example of nobody's going to say that in person. Or they might just bring it up over like a beer or something, but the norm in person is just regular conversation, whereas the norm on Twitter is like just batshit insane bullshit all the time by everyone. It's just
It's an attention game.
it's an attention
Triggering
game.
people.
Yeah, it's an attention game for sure, but also it's like, since it's the internet and people kind of just say what they want and what they can, and they should, but people just always comment on things they don't understand, especially like this is, there's a similar concept called the Gentleman amnesia effect, where if you ever read a newspaper article about a topic you're extremely familiar with. So let's say tomorrow the New York Times publishes something on Solana or podcasting, I don't know. And you'll note that they generally don't understand what they're talking about. It's very non-rigorous and the details are choppy and it's generally somewhat incorrect. And then you take that and then you say, okay, wait a minute. If they're incorrect about this thing that I actually do know, what else are they incorrect about?
Yeah, there was I saw yesterday a video about Joe Rogan. I think it was CNN saying about the medicine he took to kind of recover very quickly from COVID, that it took him 5 days. And then CNN, they kind of like reported that this is medicine for horses and everything. And then he's literally calling out on his own podcast one of these guys who works for CNN. And he's like, you guys just talking complete shit here. Like, and it doesn't make sense. And you don't even know what you're talking about. Like, how dangerous is that? Because then he's saying, if you are reporting something like that, that's so wrong. What are all the other things, right, that are so much more important that you're also reporting wrong about?
Yeah, it's called the Gentleman amnesia effect, if you want to Google it. But and this isn't specific to like any news organization. I've done a lot of interviews and, let's say, news pieces. And the very common theme is that the journalists or the reporters generally almost never are subject matter experts in that topic. And so they're kind of just trying to get a story out, which is like fine, but like they don't know that field. I think like actual journalism back in the day used to be like, we need to keep, the high-ranking people accountable and stuff. And so they just investigate their lives and stuff, like investigative journalism and all this stuff. That's fine. But like, if a journalist is writing like a white paper on Solana or something, like, it's like, come on. You're not an engineer. I actually had this idea where I was like, okay, we should have very vertically integrated media organizations where like the only people who write about engineering are engineers, former engineers who actually have an interest in writing. Because like, there's just so many things that get lost in translation. Like I was doing a media piece for like Solana's decentralization numbers. And like these people are asking me questions that are just very basic questions. Their level of knowledge that you have to transfer to them so that they can even understand how to reason about the next kind of few logical steps in that chain are immense. And that's why I don't think they can ever really report that accurately. Not to mention the bigger ones obviously generally have an agenda and some sort of story that they're trying to tell. The product is the story, not necessarily the truth.
What is your mission?
I would say I have kind of layered missions. If you kind of imagine a diagram with like a small circle and like a bigger circle and then kind of layering different missions. I would say my immediate mission is to kind of help accelerate world computing. And what I mean by world computing is I think of Solana as kind of a world computer, where in traditional systems in the internet, you have all these different parts of the internet that are basically walled gardens, and all networks, including social networks, but financial networks, physical infrastructure networks like Helium, et cetera. These things are all kind of segregated and they're walled gardens and you need middlemen to kind of facilitate them. And what that does is, one, it's actually kind of anti-capitalist because capitalism is basically about equal opportunity for everybody, right? So that it's about competency. If you have the equal opportunity, it doesn't matter if you're from Bangladesh or if you're a trust fund person from New York City. All that matters is you have the same opportunity to build things, and then the market decides the value of what you've built, right? So in an ideal case, everybody has equal access to, or not equal access, but equal opportunity to building things, creating things, and then they're judged by the market. And then, so that's one aspect. But then also you start getting, like, for example, I used to work in digital payments, and even just to send money from like Canada to Australia, the money doesn't actually just go from Canada to Australia. That's not what happens. It actually kind of hops between jurisdictions, and it's like super inefficient. And so there's a lot of inefficiency that happens when you start segregating these systems. And I think having this kind of giant world computer where anyone, regardless of what their name is or where they're from, can just build products and be judged by the market is like the ultimate kind of merit-based system where people's like, cause there's, I don't know how many people there are in the world now, but like, billions of people. And I feel like so much of that potential is kind of dormant because of all these weird arbitrary walled gardens. And I think, so that's one. If you can fix that, everybody has more opportunity. Capital moves easier between places. And then everything is more efficient. There's less take rates. People have better margins. They can kind of be more individualistic. They can start to kind of take their own future into their own hands somewhat. And so I really believe in this concept of world computing. And I think it would be pretty good, or actually quite necessary for humanity to kind of start moving more towards that instead of kind of the status quo. I think Solana is the best place to do that. I don't think it's the only place, but I think it is the best one. And so my current mission is like, how do we accelerate this thing to kind of happen faster such that I can see it before I'm dead, right? That's kind of how I think about it. Because like people are just also more mobile now, right? Like I just moved from Toronto to Dubai, and I feel like I've like removed some shackles. I feel more competent, more able. And so I think if everybody can have that, it'd be certainly worthwhile. So that's like the immediate specific mission. I would say the grander mission is kind of hard to articulate, and it's also kind of cheesy because it's actually quite similar to Elon Musk. And my co-founder, Liam, we've actually, I've told him this 10 years ago, 11 years ago, which is kind of like, I'm just interested in like magic, basically. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of things that are like super cool in the world and the universe and like the reality of being in a sense, such that I feel like there's so many new cool things to discover, but like we're kind of just, as an entire species, just holding ourselves back by doing arbitrary shit that's not important. And I feel like there's so many different things we can discover once humans are able to coordinate better and have better capital, have better opportunity, have better startup infrastructure, et cetera, for example. So I think like regulation has been, I think like one good example of this is AI, where, it's not really AI, right? They're just large language models, which is extremely sophisticated autocomplete in a sense. But like people are saying like, oh, if this keeps progressing, humanity's doomed and stuff. And there's kind of these doomers. They're always kind of trying to slow down progress in the pursuit of some, moral good or something. And I think since I've been a kid, I've always kind of just been like, there must be because I've always been interested in space. And actually that's what I wanted to do at first. I was going to major in theoretical physics, PhD in theoretical physics. And there's so many like different undiscovered things that I feel like could accelerate humanity to such an extent that we don't even know we can't even imagine it. And the main part of that I'm interested in is kind of like how humans coordinate to actually get there, but without being slowed down by these shackles. And so like it's actually pretty in line with the earlier mission. I think the earlier mission is kind of how we kind of move that forward a little more. But like I would actually ideally like to start like my own network states, which within, next 20 years or something, and kind of have this area where people are, it's a capitalist society that's about acceleration. And it's vague because, the way Elon Musk frames this is like, he's curious about the nature of consciousness. And he basically thinks that we're not asking good enough questions. And so if you can expand the scope of consciousness, you can start asking better questions and get better answers. So that's the way he frames it. I'm in consensus with that. I think that's kind of what I also came to realize earlier on. But in a much more practical way, where it's like, okay, we should be able to set up different things on different planets. We should be able to really advanced biotech, right? Like one example I'll give is I was trying to get like Manjaro, which is like a new version or a new iteration of Ozempic, and it has like different receptors and stuff. And in Canada, I could not get that. So my entire family has diabetes. Everybody has diabetes somehow. And I had pre-diabetes, like I would take the blood sugar test and stuff. And I would like tell my doctor, and I also like ate really well for the most part. And, I competed Muay Thai, did a lot of sports and whatnot. And like this guy just would not give it to me. He's like, nope, no chance, whatever. And then in Dubai, I went to the pharmacy and they just gave it to you.
In Dubai, you can get anything.
Yeah, and now I don't have pre-diabetes anymore.
Yeah.
And I have way more energy and I feel way better. I like to think I look better too. And it's like, you see what I mean with like opportunity in different kind of walled gardens?
Absolutely.
It's like now I just been able to kind of improve myself in this one way. And it's like, guess how many things there are like that in the world, right? There's a lot of them. And so if there's a contribution to be made to increase opportunity and kind of progress capitalism in a sense, I think that's going to be a net good. So that's kind of what I'm after.
You don't have to do all of that, right? Where does this crazy fire in the belly come from?
I think perhaps two things. One is like kind of just meditating on the shortness of life in a sense, where it's like, I mean, even on my finger, I have like memento mori, which means, remember you'll die. I've had a lot of early death in my family when I was a kid. And so you really appreciate kind of how short life is, and like you don't have that much time before you're kind of gone. And so you might as well really, really try to do something while you're here. There's kind of that intrinsic drive from that always has been there. And number two is that I'm just very, I get annoyed and angry very easily. So like if I go to an airport and like I hate the lines or something and I hate all lines, I'll kind of just like, what the fuck is this? Like, why can't people just design this better? Okay, here's an idea. And then I'll start like trying to design it better. And then obviously you can't do that with everything, because going back to our earlier point, you need to have domain expertise. You can't just YOLO everything, right? I'm not going to invent the cure for cancer myself. But the things that I do know how to do, which is, software development, crypto, et cetera, I see those problems and I'm like, we should just fix this right now. Like, why not? What else am I going to do? Am I going to just eat Cheetos and play video games? Like, that's not very inspiring to me. And so, yeah, it's basically a combination of the shortness of life combined with like I think David Ogilvy calls it like a divine discontent. I'm just not content. So yeah.
You're not content, but are you happy? Are you able to be happy and fulfilled when you're in a constant state of uncontentment?
I actually don't optimize for happiness.
You're not the first person saying that on that podcast.
Yeah. I think I think it's like this weird psyop from society in a sense. Like, oh, just be happy and optimize. Like, I think what's much more important is pursuing meaning. Happiness, if it comes as a result of you progressing towards the meaning and being fulfilled, that's great. But like, if I wanted to just be happy, there's much easier ways to do that, right? I can have a great family life. I can eat whatever I want, play video games, all this stuff, feel some sort of happiness from a bunch of different places. But I don't share for happiness personally, which past girlfriends have been super puzzled by this. And my family, they're like, well, what does that even mean? Like, are you kind of depressed? And it's like, no, I'm not. I'm not depressed at all. I just don't think of things in the context of happiness or even being fulfilled. I'm kind of just like, is the job getting finished? Or are we making progress here? Right? That's all I care about because it's all I want to do. And if it's what I want to do, then I guess that kind of sort of makes you happy in some sense.
Yeah.
But like, I don't optimize for happiness and I personally don't care for it. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm happy or not. All that matters is people are kind of progressing on their mission or their meaning.
You mentioned this tattoo you have on your finger before, and you told me also that you lost your mom at an early age. What did this horrible experience teach you?
I was young in Turkey, I believe maybe 10 years old or something like that. And I don't quite remember the details because it was a very chaotic time. But basically one day my dad, there used to be police sirens and stuff all the time and we'd have to go on these weird trips and I had no idea what was going on. I have some stories about that which probably aren't, which probably shouldn't be made public. But I think there was a lot of violence going on, especially in those parts of Turkey. And so one day we got on a plane and we just left for America, actually. We went to Miami where my uncle lived. And it was just me and my dad. And my mom stayed back. And I was like, fuck. Like, I was just a kid, so I didn't question it too much at the time. Yeah, we were in Miami. And then for some reason, my dad made the weird decision of going to Niagara Falls in Canada. And so we went there. And a few weeks after that, my aunts were also in Canada, my dad's sisters. Basically, they took me to this park and they're like, yeah, your mom was in like a car accident. And for some reason, I thought like I already knew that. And she was like in this coma. And I was like, oh, it's just a coma, whatever, like she'll get out of it or something. I didn't know how comas worked. And then, yeah, she passed away a few days after that. So seems to be from a car accident. So basically just crossing the street and getting hit by like a shitty driver. And then within the context of what it taught me, I think it actually ties into basically everything I've said in a sense, which is like, one, like things just happen and like the sun still comes up the next day, meaning nobody actually cares, right? It doesn't matter if your entire family just got like murdered or something, or you got bombed, nothing like this actually. You might be upset by it, rightfully so, but the world doesn't care. And the world just keeps doing the same thing that it was doing. And so as a result, there's kind of two options. One is you can kind of just, I think it's a choice. I think most people don't believe it's a choice, but I think it's a choice. I think you can kind of just be like, yeah, like this sucks. Everything is not fair. Like, why would life do this to me? Or the alternative, which is like, okay, this happened, sucks. I can't do anything about it other than move forward. And so, that's kind of what I mean by nobody's coming to help you or save you.
Absolutely.
So you kind of just, I internalized that very, very early on. So like 11 years old or something. So that's like the main thing it taught me. Obviously shortness of life as well. It also showed me a bunch of things that are like arbitrary, right? Like happiness, I think is arbitrary personally. Whereas like, you know, everybody's like, oh, you have this great family life, you celebrate Christmas and stuff, and you have all these things that people do because other people do them as well. But then like, if that part is missing because your mom passed away or something, it's like, you don't have those things. And so a lot of these things are kind of just arbitrary, and they're just done because they were done that way yesterday. And so I just started thinking that way about everything, where it's like, okay, if this is arbitrary, what else is arbitrary? And so now every time, and this annoys like all my friends and girlfriends and of the past and current and whatnot, they'll be like, oh, like, hey, do you want to celebrate this? I'm like, that's kind of arbitrary thing. Like, I don't know why that's a thing, you know? So like, I'm not like a psychopath. So I'll like, be like, oh, okay, yeah, let's celebrate Christmas, whatever, sure. But like internally, I'm like, this is so fucking weird. Like, what? Why not just, you know, think for yourself to some extent? So, and then like one of the interesting things is like, that wasn't like the only hardship at the time. Obviously I didn't know the language. I went to like the poorest school possible, I think, in Niagara Falls. It's like ranked one of the worst high schools, and like the worst elementary school. I got like, we were like staying in a church for a little bit, and like I got bed bugs, and like I was like just dying everywhere. And my dad would just stay up the entire night with like a slipper and just chill all the bugs. And I think this is like so weird. And like, it was just like hard, but like I had internalized it so much that I started coming up with like my own theories, where I was like, okay, so what? You know, like whatever. So what? There's bed bugs. So what? The school sucks. So what? I can't speak the language, whatever. And there's not really a support system. We also didn't have money. So like my dad was on welfare. So I was like eating some awful food. Oh my God. It was bad. But I was like, internally, I was like, it doesn't really matter. Like, so what? And then actually, one thing that I found fascinating was like, it's like, okay, if I can make it through this, then I can kind of just do anything. And so I kind of just started having a lot of confidence, like way too much confidence. Like my family would be like, you're way too cocky and all this stuff. I was also like pretty fat as a kid, like just straight up fat. Like I was a team captain for like all the sports. And so I was like, that's not going to stop me. And so I kind of developed like these mindsets and these kind of different mental models very early on. And then like years later, when I started actually reading stuff, in English, I found out that that was like the Stoic philosophy. And I was like, oh shit, like these guys actually already came up with this thousands of years ago, much before. I'm not as smart as I think. This has already been thought of by everybody else. So yeah.
Hey, when shift happens, family. Time to toast our partner DVIN. They're taking luxury wine to the blockchain with their super fun concept called Uncork to Earn. Buy your favorite wines, enjoy unique experiences, and get an airdrop each time you open a bottle with your friends. Cheers to DVIN for bringing transparency, authenticity, and exclusivity to the fine wines industry.
What does the Stoic philosophy say about hair loss? Because you joke a lot about, right, hair. So I had to ask, right, when did you start losing your hair? And like, in the context of what you just said, like, how did you feel?
Oh yeah. So, I actually used to have really long hair. I've shown some pictures of this and people don't believe me. Like long hair. I used to look like a typical Canadian hockey person. Like it's called the hockey flow. And I was at like Queen's University, which is like, everybody's like a tall white guy with like long hair and stuff and blonde girls. And so it was like very in line with that. And I think I looked really good. And I was like pretty self-obsessed in a sense. And so I did this program called Apple Math in Queens, which is like a double in applied math and engineering, communications and computing engineering. And I never went to class, right? I didn't go to class at all. But my roommate, who's now my co-founder, did. And so what I would do is I would play video games basically every day, or go to the gym or do something weird. And then never do class. But then like the last 2 weeks of school, I would cram the shit at, like I would just read the entire textbook I had like this weird stack where I would take 200 milligrams of caffeine, 8 milligrams of ephedrine, and like an aspirin. It's called the ECA stack. And I would do that 3 times per day. And it gave you like really good focus. So like this is like Adderall. This is just like coffee and like stimulants, an insane amount. And I would just basically devour textbooks and study for everything. Actually, my econ class, because I took an econ elective, so this is kind of where it ties in the story. In 4th year, because I just had always skipped electives. I was like, fuck this, I don't care about electives, whatever. But the fact that you need them to graduate, you need them to, like, it's actually in the degree requirements. And so the last year at university, the last semester, I had like 9 classes. And like they were all hard classes, like advanced math, where we share it with like PhD math students and stuff. And I had an econ exam the day after, and I had never went to class. I had never even looked at a textbook. And I was like, I need to learn microeconomics in one night. And I was like stressed. And so I was like, fuck this. And I just shaved my head because it was like, I was like, oh, it's getting heated here, whatever. It looks weird. I'm sick of kind of trying to fix it all the time. So I shaved my head. Did fine on all the exams. But then like roughly like when it started growing back, I was like, fuck, it's not really growing back as well as it used to. But I didn't think anything of it. And then I went to Turkey and people were like, hey, are you like losing hair? And I was like, no, that's crazy. Like, what do you mean? I'm 21 or 20 or something. I'm not losing fucking hair. Like, don't be an idiot. Sure enough though, it never actually grew back quite that well. It was just always growing back thinner, some like bald spots. And I was like, oh fuck, it's actually not going to happen. But Turkey is the hair transplant capital of the world. And like I think that's where Elon Musk went. There's pictures of him before and after and all the stuff. And I was like, okay, I can probably just get a transplant. So I just always kind of delayed it. And then I was like, you know, I saw how they did the procedure, which is like disgusting. They like take some donor things or something and they just like literally put it in your head. And then like I saw the memes about like Turkish hairlines instead of like Turkish Airlines, because every time you go to like the Istanbul airport, it's just a bunch of dudes with like this weird, bizarre look. And at the time, because I've always been into like super into fighting and whatnot, one of my idols like Jason Statham. And I'm like, you know, that guy's pretty fucking handsome. Like that guy's really good looking. So I was like, watching his movies, I was looking at this bender of Jason Statham movies. And I was like, you know what? Like, fuck this. Like, if he can pull it off, I can pull it off. Why not? And I used to just kind of like go to the shower and then like be like, okay, what would I look like if I didn't have hair? And so I would like kind of like pull it back and like look at myself. And I even like would take pictures of myself and then like remove the hair and be like, like, does this look fine? Whatever. And one of the issues with going bald is like, if you don't have a good head shape, you're fucked. Like one of my friends is like a cis, he was like a pear. It looks really bad. But I remembered in grade 6, my French teacher, who's like obsessed with me because I learned French fast at that time, was like, Mert, you know, you have a really perfect like oval head. And I was like, okay, I have a good head shape. Fuck it, right? I just shaved it. I went bald. And at first it was like a shock. I was like, oh my God, I look like a terminal patient. Like I'm dying. I'm 25. Like, why do I look like this? And like for like an hour, I think I was depressed. I think for that hour. And then I kept watching Jason Statham movies and I was like, no, all I need to do is like get a bit jacked and lose some weight. And I think it looks fine. So I started kind of just faking it for a bit. Like the confidence. I was self-conscious for probably a few months. But then I was like, this actually looks pretty good. And once I started the company, I was like, this actually is also kind of like a superpower because people think you're way older than you are. And so they take you seriously. But then also like women, and people think I'm like coping around this or something, but like you stand out much more if you're bald, which can be a bad thing, right? People like, oh, this is a bald guy, whatever. And it generally is a bad thing in most cases. But like, that's not set in stone. You can also make it into like an edge in a sense. Like if you're super noticeable, people just pick you out. And so I would kind of just like flirt with girls and whatnot when I was single. And I was like, this is actually, it works pretty well. Like I'm able to kind of get girlfriends, go on dates, all this stuff. Nobody actually seems to care.
People don't care.
Yeah.
Back to that, right? People don't care.
Yeah. And it's like, I was kind of like, just get over yourself. Nobody gives a shit if you don't have some hair, like whatever. And over time I was like, this is actually sick. And now you could not pay me to get hair on my head. I actually love not having hair. I've like kind of made it into a meme, right? Like it's like, if you want to increase your CEO skills, you have to shave your head.
I mean, it's kind of one of the big memes with Brian also.
Yes.
From Coinbase.
And like Brian doesn't have a beard. So like, he's really, like he looks like Casper the Ghost. And I mean, I love Brian, but like, I think he can pull it off too. And then, I don't know, it's just, what some of like the things are super weird that you notice. Like you look at all the movies and like the hero is almost never a bald guy. Like it's very rare. Versus the villain is like always bald. There's like Voldemort or like Bane or like Lex Luthor or like Kingpin. And it's just like this weird thing where like not having hair is like this frowned upon thing societally in a sense. But again, it goes back to my thing of like, these things are just fucking arbitrary. Like it's not actually, it doesn't have to be that way.
And women love villains, right? So you have the tattoos and you have the bald hair.
Yes. Like that is
and
why
you're angry. Yes. At the conversation with Mike Novogratz, actually, we talked about like getting bald and all that stuff. And he was like, yeah, it was also hard in the beginning, but at some point I realized there's many things that come with that, which, you can kind of justify to yourself, high testosterone level, all that stuff, which is very manly and actually ultimately can really attract. Yeah, makes sense.
It's actually like one of the things people don't understand about being bald is like, they're like, oh, this is like super easy to maintain, whatever, you don't have this hair. It's way harder to maintain because if you don't shave every day or every other day or something, you start looking ridiculous. Like you start getting the weird Gary Gensler look where the hair goes on the sides. And like, you don't want that as a 28-year-old, okay? You need to be like bald for it to actually work. So it's actually a lot of work to maintain.
And there's the beard too now to maintain, which probably takes a lot of time too.
The beard is weird because girls think like, every girl that I've been with is like, they like me because like, they think I'm whatever, handsome and stuff at first. And later they're like, you should shave the beard or something. I'm like, what the fuck do you mean? Like, if I shave the beard, I'm gonna look ridiculous. And so, yeah.
Okay, let's start with a serious topic. Crypto. That's why we're here today.
Yes.
How did you get so fascinated by the world of crypto?
So in undergrad, I was a math major and I took some cryptography courses, like pure cryptography. And my roommate Liam was like mining some weird shit, like Raven coin or something.
I remember that coin.
Yeah. And like our school, super small school, but like people were randomly already into crypto, like the core team for MakerDAO, and like Nansen, well, not Nansen, he was the head of strategy at Nansen, but like people were already big on Ethereum and Bitcoin. And I just like a random interview where this guy's like, oh, we're going to use the blockchain to like improve the education system. And like, it sounded really stupid to me. And I was like, this is not going to work, whatever. And because I was so theoretical at the time, I was like, you probably need a PhD to do anything meaningful in crypto. And like, that was my kind of quick judgment. And that was obviously wrong. But so I never looked at it further than that, but I did go into finance. So I worked in a bunch of the big banks in Canada. And I also did like digital payments, like ATM payments, card payments and stuff like that for a few startups. And I noticed like how I hated it. The payment systems are super shit. If you know how like the current banking system works, it's like 1985 programming languages doing some bizarre shit that makes no sense and super inefficient. And that story that I said earlier about like, we had to move money from Australia to Canada once. And I saw how hard it was. And I was like, and I knew like about crypto and I was like, why not just like use USDC or like even Bitcoin or something? And people were like, that's a scam. And this was like 2020 or 2021 or something. And I really did not like that answer. And I was like, this clearly shows a problem. And like within 2 or 3 weeks, I was working at Coinbase. Before they went public, so I joined Coinbase. At Coinbase, I was on a team called Ledger, which is basically a team that builds APIs for everybody else within Coinbase to build products. So Coinbase.com, Coinbase Advanced Trading, Coinbase Wallet, they all use these APIs that we built. And then Coinbase also has like a super smart culture internally, and everybody's super involved with crypto. Well, not everybody, but like certainly the earlier hires. The newer hires aren't really crypto native. And so there were all these channels internally, like DeFi farming strategies, NFTs, and all this stuff. And I would just play around with all the chains on my own. And on the weekends or just during the late night, I was like, I feel so annoyed by not knowing all these systems. And so I like would study the white papers. I read like the Avalanche white papers, Solana, Polkadot, ICP, even like everything. And I would also like just build stuff for fun. And I built a few EVM things. And then I was like, Solana seems interesting because the white paper is like a communication system, like a radio system. And that was my undergrad. And I was like, this actually is a very interesting way of scaling. And it seems to be like kind of not consensus for some reason. So I bought Solana, but I also started building on it. At one point, I had built, you know, like back in the day when NFTs were a thing, there would be like these sales bots or like listings bots on the Discord where it's like, oh, like a new rare NFT got listed, or like somebody would sell an NFT for like $500,000. Everybody would comment like free or something because they thought it would have went for like 10 million. At one point, like 90% of all those bots on all Solana Discords were just bots that I built just for fun. And then similarly, there was no explorers, there was no block explorers, there was no analytics sites. And these NFT influencers on Twitter would say some bizarre shit like, oh, this NFT's like popping off or minting out, whatever. But then I would, and like nobody could check, but then I would look at like the distribution because I would write indexers on my own to like see what they're doing. And it's like this guy would like mint like 900 to himself and then be like, yeah, it's being sold out quickly. And I'm like, are you fucking stupid? It's a public blockchain. Like everybody can see what you're doing. And so I would like reply guy them. And at this time I had like basically no followers, like less than 1,000. So I basically just kept doing that for a bit. And I also noticed the industry's like Ethereum, let's say bias. People would like write threads about how Solana's shit all the time. But like they would never talk about the downsides of Ethereum. And I was like, this is kind of weird. And this is also the case within Coinbase, and I was like, but these people are smart.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I was like, why are smart people like just totally not being very balanced here? So I was super annoyed by that. And so people would like say a bunch of shit on the internet and write these posts. And I'd be like, actually, that's kind of incorrect because here's actually how it works. And I mean, I started doing that. I never stopped. But I also even started doing it within Coinbase. And then basically like one day, I had always wanted to start a startup since like 14. I didn't know they were called startups at that time. I just said, I'm just going to start a company or invent products or something. And then, yeah, one day I was just like, I think, I don't quite remember the exact story, but like we were building a product within Coinbase and like, I was like, we should add Solana to this. And they were actually okay with it. Like, okay, sure, let's add Solana. But like on Ethereum, you could use like Etherscan APIs to bootstrap something super fast. On Solana, you had nothing. I was like, I can just build this out, but like that's going to take a while. And I was like, wait a minute, why not just start this company myself and then I'll sell it to Coinbase later or something. And so I started the company, and like fast forward 2.5 years, we actually did sell it to Coinbase. So they're a customer now. So it did work out. But that was like this story, I guess.
Let's start with the kind of going all in on Solana.
So Andreessen Horowitz, the VC firm, Ben and Mark have a podcast where they talk about random shit, startups, whatever. And like one day they talked about like Nicotine And they were like, I think they were talking about like, hey, is it like a nootropic? Like, does it help you think better and stuff? And I had always been scared of it. At the time I was kind of fat as well. And I wanted to like start vaping because I was like, nicotine drives your appetite, whatever. I've never seen a fat guy that smokes cigarettes in Europe or something, or in Europe in general, but whatever. And I was like, but I was super scared of smoking because of my lungs, whatever. I didn't want them to get damaged. And I didn't know these things existed until Mark Andreessen and Ben Horowitz on their podcast was like, they were talking about nicotine, about how it's like a stimulant and stuff. And I think they said like, okay, like maybe we should experiment with it. Like they were going to experiment with it. And I was like, hold up. Like these 50-year-old guys are taking this thing and I'm not. Like, what the fuck's happening here? And so I went to the store and I just picked one up. And at first it was like, oh my God, like it was a huge kind of, it makes you dizzy and nauseous and all this shit. But then I kind of like confirm biased myself. I was just looking at all these things and it's like, yeah, it can like delay cognitive aging and like it can help boost memory and stuff. And I was like, sure, whatever. I'll convince myself that this is probably not a horrible thing to take. And then I like, I obviously tweet a lot and do a lot of marketing. And like that's like a creative endeavor, which I think benefits highly from putting your mind in alternate states. So you can kind of like have different states of mind and then mix them up and then come up with new ideas. And so that's why I started. And it doesn't do too much for me, honestly. Like it maybe helps me think faster in some regards, curbs appetite so that I don't have to be distracted with food. But that's kind of it.
So it helps you be more creative.
I think so. It's very hard to measure creativity, but I think it does.
I just released the podcast with Jesse Pollack from Base last week. And we talk about him vaping. He has a CryptoPunk, right? As a profile picture, and there's a vape. So I ask him, why do you have a crypto? And then I ask him, you CryptoPunk vapes, do you vape? And then he started to explain that he actually vapes, but not nicotine. He vapes weed because it enables him to open kind of new pathways. So he's like, when I have a big problem to solve, I vape some weed and then I go for a run. And I have my solution.
Oh shit. So, wow, that's intense. I personally don't, I mean, I used to smoke. Oh man, in university, me and my roommate, we would just every night, like we would smoke weed and then I would always come up with like random physics theories. And I was like, oh, like what if humans are just electricity? Like, can I be Electric Man or something? And he actually videoed it and he like blackmails me with it all the time now as a joke. But then I realized like once you're sober, let's say, all the shit you said was super dumb. And it's like, it's not super helpful. But with nicotine, it's like, it doesn't feel like anything. So it's just like perhaps like 5% difference or something. So, and if you're drinking, which in crypto, I mean, you don't have to drink, but like there's a lot of networking events. And I also like just having like a random drink to, again, be creative and stuff. I stole that from David Ogilvy, by the way. He was like the grandfather of advertising. It actually counter affects the sedative effects of alcohol. So you can have like some filters turned off in your brain, but still be alert. And I find there's like this weird zone where you can kind of just go out and there, bang some tweets or ideas and stuff that I find helpful.
Talking about banging tweets, which you do a lot, right? I have to get back to kind of like the beginning of your Solana story, right? Online one. And I have to quote our common friend, Miao, the co-founder of Jupiter, who's one of the podcast sponsors. Miao wrote an article at the end of 2023, right? Referring to a year prior to that. So I'll take a few chunks and then I'll ask questions that hopefully make sense based on those kind of chunks. So he wrote, he's only a small Mert now, but within the year will grow into the most formidable fire-breathing dragon in the whole city, loved by some, feared by all, avoided by baddies. My first question is, entrepreneurs and investors, usually they rely on patterns to build judgment, right? What other catastrophic events happen in your life as an entrepreneur or investor that made you realize that the collapse of FTX was a huge opportunity for you to step in and become a leader in the Solana ecosystem at the very moment where others were leaving because they thought that it was the end of Solana.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't hard. I think people like kind of always think it was like this super difficult moment. And I guess it was for some people, but for me, we had a company. I mean, we have a company, Helius. And so what had happened was like, obviously FTX came out as a fraud. And one thing I didn't understand was why everybody was saying Solana is dead after that happened. Because based on my understanding, like the last thing FTX released on Solana was a horrible NFT marketplace that totally tanked. And then their last few investments were like Aptos and like other blockchains. And so I think they were like helpful in like 2020, like during the super early days. But by 2022, they really weren't doing anything except dump on retail with horrible tokenomics and shit investments. And so my first instinct was like, oh, this is awesome. I was like, wait a minute, like now this predatory person, team, whatever is gone. So now the ecosystem can be way better. But like, for some reason, nobody saw it that way. They're like, Solana's only successful because of this thing. But like, I was like, that they didn't do anything to help the chain. Why is it successful because of them? I think they like helped get attention towards the chain during the early days. But since then, I hadn't seen them do anything useful. And at the time, Solana had like some outages in the previous months. And, you know, I was talking to Tolly and stuff. And I saw like the solutions they proposed to fix those things. And I was like, oh, this works. Like this will solve the issue. And I was like, sweet. Like now there's no more predatory tokenomics. And there's like a new engineering system kind of coming online. We still have a bunch of customers with Helius. We saw like somewhat of a downtick, but like overall the trend was like you follow the developers and the developers were still building on chain. And like I put those things together and I was like, what the fuck? Like what? How is everybody so bearish right now? And then, you know, you start to realize how stupid CT is, where they look at the chart. They look at the chart and they're like, okay, the price is going down, therefore this chain sucks. And it's like, you don't have full information, or you don't understand full information, or you simply don't have the balls, or you're just thinking arbitrary. You're an ape. You're just mimetically copying other apes. You're not actually thinking. And so I would see like all these posts saying the most bizarre shit, like the L1 wars are over, or like Solana is dead. And like, I have a lot of screenshots of those, by the way, like gigabytes worth of the shit. And I was like, these guys are going to get so fucked. Like, this is so incorrect. And I was like, not only am I going to, with my team, help build better solutions to make the blockchain work even better, I'm also going to invest in better companies. But then also I'm going to smack people in the face, hypothetically speaking, on the internet who say this dumb shit with just facts. I mean, none of my arguments were opinionated. I mean, they were opinionated in the sense that obviously I have strong opinions, but they were always backed up by something. And that was it. And I was like, Jay, you're wrong. Here's why you're wrong. And turns out they were wrong. So, you know.
I think it's Gary Vee. I saw a couple of years ago. He was saying the real entrepreneur is the guy, he was, I think he was just bookmarking all the tweets. And then he was like, you know what? The real entrepreneur is the one who bookmarks or screenshots and then comes back 1, 2, 3 years later and then just like say, what now, bitch?
Yeah, I mean, it's like the Michael Jordan thing where it's like somebody will do literally anything. Like maybe they winked at Michael Jordan or something. He'd be like, and I took that personally, and he just gets rattled. And I'm like kind of the same. I'm like, you fucking dicks. Like what, how dare you like try to shut down an entire ecosystem with false information and do horrible charts and stuff. Like I'm going to get you. Like that was kind of my thought.
He shall vigilantly scan the expensive skies day and night, not just replying, but becoming the reply guy. FUD shall be eliminated, mistakes will be corrected, sometimes politely, sometimes annoyingly, but never wrongly. All who read his replies should be enlightened. Why is the reply job one of the single most important jobs in a crypto ecosystem?
It's actually like a very fundamental reason. The only way progress is made and errors are corrected and knowledge is created is through discourse. Okay. Which is to say, somebody states something, there's an opinion, perhaps it's backed by some data, and the free market of ideas then battles it out. And then the idea that's, least wrong kind of, sort of wins, right? Until a better idea comes along and then something like that. So being a reply guy is important because in crypto, due to the incentive structures, which is like very short-term incentives, and people are obviously swayed by price more than brains, let's say, combined with the social aspects of crypto, which is like, it's just a very social system. Not only intrinsically in terms of like social consensus, but also like, since you have like all these markets, people want to feel like they're making the right choices. So they just always talk about these things. But then also people aren't building too much, and so people just yap. And so you bring all these things together. You have this kind of social system where people just, they'll say their opinion. And like, generally speaking, I don't assume intent too often. Like, I don't know if they're trying to be malicious or something. And so I try to just look at what they said, and I look at the argument, and I'm like, that is false. And I know that it's false because I've done the work to kind of research this. And it's like, okay, if you know that, but you don't comment, then you kind of just cheated everything because you have all this knowledge, but you're not using it. So like, what are you doing? And like, one of the things people will say is like, well, you're never going to change somebody's mind. And it's like, okay, that might be correct if it's a one-on-one private chat, but on Twitter, everybody sees everything. And so if somebody's saying something and broadcasting it out to the world, like, Solana is centralized, and I know that it's not, I'm not going to change that person's mind, but like whoever reads that can now see both sides of the argument, and then they can decide for themselves. So like, being a reply guy, it's not just a crypto thing, it's important in everything. It's important, like literally everything. It's super important. And like, reply guy is just crypto's branding of it, but fundamentally that's just how humans learn and create knowledge. If you like read like a David Deutsch book, everything is conjectures and then criticism, and then criticism leads to new conjectures and then criticism, etc. And then the idea is to keep reducing the errors such that you have something approximating truth fundamentally. Like that's what science is, right? Science is basically trusting in the ignorance of experts, I think, is what Feynman said or something, which is like, there's these established ideas, and the only way science moves forward is like, yeah, I think that idea is wrong, and here's like a better way of thinking about it. And then you kind of have all these things. Like, no, the Earth is not the center of the universe. Actually, the Earth revolves around the sun, right? That's basically just being a reply guy to the church. And I think it's just, that's just like a very deep belief that I have, that you have to have this battle place of ideas.
How do you put food on the table or build a big company when you spend your days replying to people on Twitter?
Well, the most important thing is you need to have a really good team. So Helius is 3 co-founders, me, and then Nick and Liam, who are my university friends since 10 years ago, and roommates as well. So I know them very well. I trust them deeply. And they do the engineering. Like, I'm an engineer, but they do the day-to-day engineering and whatnot. I do like marketing and product sales and all this stuff. I mean, fundamentally, it just comes down to having a really good team that you can act. Like, the job of a CEO is not to do everything. It's to kind of hire people smarter than you to do the things that you can't do, right? So we have a team of 20 plus people, all better engineers than me. We have better BD than me, better legal than me, et cetera, all these things. And so it's about kind of just putting together the best team. That's like the most important job of the leader. But the other half is telling the story and well, not only doing sales and marketing, which goes in with this, but recruiting. And then like, obviously we're deeply mission centric. Like we believe, like our mission statement internally is accelerating world computing. And like a part of that mission is making sure that that mission is resonant with as many people as possible. So like, if I'm not talking about our mission, then perhaps I don't believe in it too much, right? And I can't really back it up. And so fundamentally, it's like, I want crypto to succeed and proceed because, earlier about basically my life mission. And I think the way to do that is twofold. One is you need to obviously build the thing. You need to ship, you need to build products, you need to iterate, you need to improve these systems. But then the other part is like, you need to argue, you need to debate, you need to tell the vision, you need to recruit, you need to dispel things. And like, you can't just do one is kind of how I look at it. But also like people also kind of get this wrong where they're like, oh, like you just kind of tweet every day or all day. It's not correct. Like, I mean, right now I haven't tweeted in a very long time. Maybe, I don't know how long it's been. It's very quick to tweet. Like on just the realistic aspect of this, I don't schedule tweets. I don't take like an hour drafting a tweet. I'll just have an idea and I'll tweet it right away and it'll take me a minute. And that's it. Like it doesn't actually take that long.
By the end of the year, all shall be educated. A new generation of shit posters and reply guys for Solana will have been inspired and empowered. And all but the blindest maxis of them, all shall see the light. How much of an impact do you think you personally had on Solana, going from $8 after the FTX collapse to today, 2 years later, being the fastest horse on this new crypto cycle?
I've kind of wondered this, and then I was like, it doesn't really matter what my answer to this is. I've talked to a lot of people, all these conferences, but also like private meetings that nobody really sees and stuff. Government people, VCs, institutional people. So I've been fortunate enough to kind of talk to all these very, influential people, let's say. I don't know, but like one thing I know, somebody I think like sent me this presentation from like another blockchain, and like their mission was cultivate 100 Merts or something.
That's the next question.
And that's not the first time. There's like a podcast episode with like Tolly and Blockworks. And Blockworks guy, Jason, is like, man, like every time I talk to one of these L1s and L2s, their mission is to get like a Mert on their chain. And like I see this on the internet all the time too. It's like, well, the problem is Ethereum doesn't have a Mert, or like the problem is something that doesn't have a Mert. And I'm kind of like, this is kind of weird. So I think, it seems like people think I've had an impact. Something that people probably don't know is like, there's a lot of really powerful people in crypto that aren't public, and they're on Twitter, but they're anon and stuff. Super rich, insanely, like it doesn't even make sense. And these people are really friendly to me because they think I'm like one of the main reasons why, their, bags, let's say, got saved. So I've certainly, but then, there's other people who are like, actually, I think most people know that I've tried my best, at least. Fundamentally, it's impossible for me to answer that question. I think quantitatively, Helius specifically has had a big impact just due to the amount of customers, like, because I can see the number of customers and revenue, customer testimonials and stuff. I can look at that and be like, okay, yeah, we've definitely helped here. and the numbers kind of speak for themselves. On the more social side, I don't know. I just kind of try to do my best and see what happens.
We've come such a long way since the disastrous end of 2022 in crypto and in the Solana ecosystem. How does it feel today to have been the most outspoken character on Solana when everyone was against you and mocking you, and to now be proven right?
I don't think we've been proven right. I think, I mean, I'm still paranoid pretty much every day. And I message this totally on Slack every day or every other day or something. And I'm like, dude, like, why the fuck are you working on a phone? Like, you need to come back to the L1. You need to ship stuff. We're going to fall behind. We need to compete. We need to kind of keep going. And then he'll give me some totally like saying random debate shit for its own sake. And so we'll go back and forth. I like what it feels like is, I think it's just, I'm just more paranoid. Like, it's like we've come this way, but like, that doesn't mean shit if we can't keep accelerating. Like, we ship fast, we have a good blockchain. It still has a lot of problems, but like, and like, there's like this new PSYOP narrative where people think like Ethereum is the underdog. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, it's by far the biggest in market cap. It has by far the most ecosystem teams. It's been around longer. It has more institutional adoption. It basically has everything more, but somehow the social narrative is that Ethereum is the underdog because the chart didn't go up for 4 months. And I'm like, okay, this is not a good setup. Everybody thinks Solana has won, which it hasn't. There's a lot of work to do. And the competition has a lot of advantages that are ignored. Like, for example, L2s are centralized, obviously. Currently, they probably will get decentralized, some of them. But that means they can ship much faster. On Solana, if you want to ship an upgrade, it's going to wait half a year, and then it's thousands of machines to actually upgrade that, and there's all these weird technical nuances. Whereas like an L2, they're like, okay, code update, that's it. It's like a super huge structural disadvantage. And like, people don't care about decentralization like I do, but like, you know, they'll compare like an L1 or L2 with one sequencer's TPS numbers to Solana's TPS numbers. And I'm like, this is like such horrible framing. Like, this is an L1 blockchain with 1,000 nodes doing, 2,000 TPS versus one centralized AWS server doing 500 TPS. And you somehow think that the L2 is the underdog. Like, it makes no sense to me. And so, anyways, not to ramble, but like, I would say I feel paranoid, which is like, I don't know. I think like the Kobe's like job not finished thing is like overplayed, but like, that is how it is. There's a shitload of work to do, and we need to, that's why I always say accelerate, because acceleration is not about going fast and then staying at that pace. Acceleration is the rate of change in velocity, meaning you need to keep being faster and faster and faster. It doesn't matter if you're going 200 kilometers an hour or something. You need to go 210, 220, 240, 300, break fucking speed of light, break the sound barrier. And so we have a lot of work to do, and we need to go faster, and no one should be content. Everybody should be super paranoid.
Absolutely. Having the paranoid side is like, is definitely the most important aspect, because the opposite of that is what complacency, right? Is what kills successful companies. What is Helius, if you had to explain it to a grandmother?
Home Depot for internet apps. That's, if it was my grandmother, I would say it's basically that. Just imagine a hammer and a nail, but on the internet. Right. They're tools to help you build things. In this case, help you build crypto applications, but she doesn't know what a crypto application is.
Why did you start Helius instead of any other crypto company?
Yeah, so this one's easy. I mean, something that I've always been super annoyed by is the lack of applications in crypto, the lack of useful applications in crypto specifically. At the time, when I was about to start Helius, it was like, okay, it was going to be multi-chain. It was like, okay, Ethereum, EVM chains, and Solana. But then you kind of realize that like building something for everybody means you're building it for nobody. Like your focus is too split, quality suffers. And so I had to make a decision to, okay, where do I build? And taking kind of my fundamental problem, which is the lack of useful crypto applications, into account, it's like, okay, how do I change this, right? How can I make an impact such that there's more useful crypto applications? Obviously I can tweet, but like fundamentally there needs to be some other things to help with that. And I figured the best is like, make it much easier for developers to bring ideas into life. So like this concept of, I have an idea, I'm going to make it into a product. The time between those two steps needs to be as short as humanly possible so that there's as many apps as possible. And if there's as many apps as possible, then the chances of one of those turning out to be a useful app that's actually used with PMF is greater. So it's just the highest kind of leverage thing that I think I could do. And then at the time, Ethereum wasn't scaling, like it was still the L1. And there was like, basically what needs to happen is you need to have the merge. So go from proof of work to proof of stake on Ethereum. You need to have 4844 go live. You need to go like, blob space. You need to get L2s to work. You need to get L2s to kind of go to stage 0, stage 1, stage 2, dank sharding, all these different things. And I was like, okay, if you keep multiplying all those events together and they're conditional on each other, the probability of building a useful application on Ethereum keeps getting lower and lower every time you multiply one of those conditionals together. Versus on Solana, it already works, it already scales, but working on it is shit. And it also obviously has problems. But I was like, okay, those are solvable problems. We know how to solve them. We've done this in school. We've done this in our careers. All we need to do is be super opinionated and then pick the best playground for enabling applications. And at the time, that was Solana. I do think it's still Solana today, but that was kind of the criteria.
What does founders fund investing in Helius, the Home Depot for Solana, say about the big money's long-term belief on the Solana ecosystem as a whole?
Well, VCs don't look at 2x returns. They look at 10, 100,000, 1 million X returns, right? That's the game of venture capital. Every investment that you make must be able to return the entire fund in a sense. And Founders Fund's a big fund. And I do think it's, maybe I'll tell the story some other time as well, but like Peter Thiel is like the main reason why I started a startup. And so it was like pretty interesting that like, I was reading his book 0 to 1, like 4 years ago. And I was like, I finished in one day. And I was like, that's a good point. Maybe I should start a startup. And then now like he's invested in my company. So that's like felt pretty nice. I don't optimize for happiness, but I was like, yeah, sweet.
For 1 minute.
Yeah.
Then back to work.
Well, it means that they think the ecosystem is going to grow, right? Like, because a VC only makes an investment if they think there's asymmetric upside. And so they think there's asymmetric upside, obviously. They also invest in companies that are in line with their kind of values, which is like pretty much in line with Peter Thiel's values, like a contrarian, opinionated founder, right? Kind of being the best choice in a given market, like not being in like a super crowded market and being like a marginal player, but like being able to capture 80% of a market and like kind of being able to expand from there. So I think a lot of those values fit. And I think basically like if Solana is to grow, then Helius will obviously grow. And then if we execute right, which we will capture most of that upside. I mean, like, we released a validator just as like a last second thing 5 months ago or something. And now we're the #1 validator. And at the time we had like an internal all hands and we were number 80 or something. And I was like, because Coinbase or Galaxy, which are massive, obviously, are number one. And I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure we can be number one. Like, there's no real reason why we can't be. And like, my team was like, I don't know about that. Like, whatever, weird CEO talk and stuff. And I was like, no, like, we'll make it happen. And then we did. And we can execute really well. And it's like, now it's about, like, okay, people think my competition is like other RPC providers or other developer platforms or something, but it's not. Sure, maybe on like a 1 week, 1 month time horizon, whatever, but like, that's not how I think. My competition is people not building on Solana. Okay. So base. And I know, Jesse will kind of say all these things like, oh no, like this is too small a pie. Like we're collaborating to like bring everybody on chain and stuff. And like, yeah, that's correct. But like, there's obviously competition there. It's not like, if you're a developer, you need to pick. Are you going to pick base or are you going to pick Solana?
Yeah.
Right? Like, and it's like, yeah, you can pick both, but not everybody's going to do that. And so in the case that it is competitive, which does exist, life is competition, business is war, I will win that. Okay. And that's the mindset. So, anyways, the TLDR is Founders Fund. I mean, they haven't told me this, but obviously they believe this. They think Solana will grow quite a bit and it has to grow asymmetrically for it to be worth a venture investment.
You tweeted, the greatest quote of all time is this one by Jung. You are what you do, not what you say you'll do. Simple, but so true. Why do so many people just talk?
It's just, it's much easier to talk than do. I think it's as simple as that. People really love like, feeling empowered by reading motivational quotes and like bookmarking all these things and like saying, oh, I will do that and whatnot. And like that gives them like a dopamine release. But then like once you actually do it, you're like, fuck, this sucks. Like, what do you mean I have to do work? What do you mean I have to exert energy and go against, inertia and stuff? And like, that's hard. And so talking is much easier. But also, you can bullshit with talking easily. You can't bullshit with doing. And so that's like, it's just a numbers game. Talking will always be easier. And like, it will also, like, for example, let's say you want to optimize for being happy. Perhaps you'll play video games and you'll feel happy. Okay, good. But like, perhaps it's kind of the same thing with talking, which is like, okay, I want to look successful or I want to feel like I'm doing something. Okay, I'll talk. And then maybe I'll get like a like. And it's like, you think you trick your system into thinking you've done something. You have not done that much. I tweeted this yesterday, actually.
I saw that.
Which is like, oh man, this pisses me off so much. Like people will say, oh, like Ethereum has a marketing problem. And like the best founders I know are like the ones who are shit posting on Twitter all the time and stuff. And like, no offense to those people. But like the people being referenced in those are people with zero product live. Okay. And I'm an investor in some of them. And so I obviously believe in their ideas. And it's not them that's saying this, obviously. So the fault isn't with them. It's that people look at that and they're like, oh, this guy throws good parties. They talk all the time on Twitter. They get likes. Great founder. This is what we need. It's like, you're an idiot. Like you cannot just talk. You must do and talk. You can't not do just one. And Steve Jobs has a good quote on this, right? Like, he likens it to thinking and not talking. So like, he says, the greatest people in the history have been both the thinker and doer in one person, right? It's very easy to think and say, oh, I had this idea. It's very hard to actually tighten the screws, line up the gears, make sure the tolerances are right, make sure that you can bring it to market, all this. That's so hard. And like, he gives the example of like, Leonardo da Vinci didn't just have a guy off to the side saying, oh, what should we paint in 3 years and what strategy should we take? It's like, no, the guy was like studying anatomy. He was sculpting. He was building helicopters while painting. He was doing all these things. He was a good chemist. He was mixing the pigments. He didn't just have this guy thinking for him. You have to both think and do. In this case, for an entrepreneur, not only do you have to think and do, you have to think, do, and sell. And sell generally means talk. Now, the talk doesn't have to be on Twitter. You don't have to be a shit poster. A good example is Bridge that just got acquired by Stripe. They weren't talking on Twitter. They were talking on Zoom calls and closing deals, right? That's also a thing. Talk doesn't mean shit post on Twitter. Talk means sell. And selling means selling yourself to employees, to customers, to investors. You're always selling.
What's keeping people from actually starting that company, quitting that job, losing those 20 pounds, getting that dream girlfriend, getting those abs?
It's just mindset. It's always mindset. I will take zero excuse on this. People, especially people in Turkey, because I'm Turkish, I can say this. They'll say something like, oh, but the VC scene here isn't good, or like, oh, but the government does this here. It's like, fuck off, I don't care. Who cares? Nobody cares. It doesn't matter. Just do it. Go somewhere else then, right?
Like the same example, I'm Swiss and people in Switzerland are like, oh man, but in Silicon Valley, blah, blah. I'm like, just fucking move there.
Yeah,
I move there.
it's like, I don't have money to move there. It's like, okay, make money. What do you mean? Like, you can always create an excuse for anything. The only way to get through this stuff is to be an unstoppable force that can overcome excuses. So, cause like, there's always an obstacle, always there's an obstacle. And it's always mindset. Like I was in Turkey, I was in Canada. I can't eat food. I have a swallowing problem. There's always an excuse to all these. It's just like all these guys who are like, oh, I can't catch a break. It's like, fuck off. Like, what do you mean you can't catch a break? You just don't be a bitch about it. Just go forward. Make it happen, right? Or what's the alternative? You don't make it happen. Okay. You didn't make it happen. What are you going to do? Just say that? It's like, okay, have fun with that. Like you're going to die soon. And then you're going to be, when you're 90, you're going to be like, shit, I should have just done that. I should have just made it happen. It's like, yeah, you should have. And now it's too late. And so my advice would be, you can just do the thing. There'll be many reasons why you can't, but you just need one for why you can. And then you need to pursue that one, right? You can really do, and again, this is like a Steve Jobs thing where it's like everything you see around you that you call life was like made up by people 100% that are no smarter than you.
Everything.
They just did it.
Everything.
If you can just do something and there's something else that there's an output, maybe it's not the right output. Maybe you messed up or something. Sure, whatever, but you still did something. Like you have a lot of agency over the world. And people always say like, oh, I want to change the world. And they like talk and do these lobbying shit. It's like, okay, let's try changing something concrete first and see if you can do that. And then kind of start expanding from there. Right? Like, anyway, it's just mindset. It's just, you need to just believe that you can do something. It doesn't matter how unrealistic it is. Realism is stupid, I think. Like, look, if you have hard numbers you're working with or something where you need to be like, oh, like we need to be profitable to survive as a company, it's like, yeah, okay, that's fair, obviously. But if it's like, we can't make money because we didn't talk to Silicon Valley people, it's like, what? What do you mean? Talk to them. Or first of all, why do they let you do? There's people who did that without Silicon Valley. Like, stop making excuses. So just fucking do the thing.
What's your biggest prediction for the next 12 months?
My biggest prediction for the next 12 months, Trump will be president. I actually don't know. I haven't actually checked the numbers on that at all. Oh, Fire Dancer will go live within the next 12 months. That's one prediction I feel confident in. Solana will have another outage. Is another prediction.
which is bullish.
Yeah, people, and honestly, I don't know. If there's like a more specific context, I can probably answer that better. But
Thank you so much for doing this, man.
force, thanks for having me.
That was a great conversation. And as a manlet myself, thank you on behalf of many others who for spending your days educating people on the Solana ecosystem and fighting all this FUD day in and day out, even when the world was against you. Even if you didn't want to admit it before, I think like the Solana ecosystem wouldn't be here without you. And so I hope you can take a minute to appreciate what you've done and to take some well-deserved pride. Thank you.
Thank you.